One of the most popular emerging genres of the 90s was the RTS game. Breaking into the mainstream with titles such as Dune 2, the real-time strategy game required players to manage resources, buildings and units to achieve victory. 1997 saw the release of the original Age of Empires, which brought a new take to the genre through its unique blend of theme and mechanics. It was set in a light historical setting and allowed players to advance their faction through different ages, from cavemen to castles, which resulted in a refreshing experience for the time. Developed by Ensemble Studios, the game was a massive success and sold over 650,000 copies in its first 3 months. Such a successful game couldn't go without a sequel, and on the 30th of September 1999, Age of Empires 2 Age of Kings was released. Analysing Age of Empires 2 using Jesse Schell's elemental Tetrad constitutes splitting the game into 4 main aspects: aesthetics, mechanics, story and technology. The aesthetics branch of the Tetrad would be the first thing the player notices when launching the game. Both the main menu's look and the grand, booming soundtrack perfectly suit the medieval theme. The developers clearly made sure to sprinkle this historic flavour throughout its entirety. An example of this is when the player begins a level in the campaign. They select a mission from the options displayed on a map, which itself effectively provides a sense of progression, and then when entering a game, they are treated to a fully voiced cutscene, giving the context in a storybook style with illustrations that could have easily been ripped from the time. In terms of aesthetics in the game itself, Age of Empires succeeds in many ways. Each unit has sprites that stand out against the background due to the application of a bright team colour that also serves double for quickly identifying which unit comes from which faction. The units also have animations that clearly show what they are doing. This helps make everything easy to digest and react to. An important aesthetic feature directly tied to the game's core mechanic is how each building changes over time. Starting from weak wooden structures, a player's base evolves visually to very clearly display a player's progression through the ages. Each civilization also has distinct building designs that reflect them, as well as a wholly unique wonder building that actually existed. One of the most important aesthetic features of Age of Empires 2 that can't go understated is the sound. Music director Stephen Rippey assembled a soundtrack that perfectly evokes the historical ages the game is tied to, and manages to capture the grand scale of leading a civilization through the Middle Ages while still being somewhat relaxing. Individual sound effects are largely what you would expect from a medieval strategy game. Swords clashing, arrows flying and castles exploding, but in general sounds can be very useful for the player to know what's going on. From farms giving a distinct jingle when they're out of food, to the iconic noise of a monk taking control of your soldiers, the game conveys itself through audio cues very well. On the mechanical side of things, the game is interesting in that all civilizations the player can choose are largely the same. Each side generally has access to most of the same units, and have minor bonuses that can aid players in certain strategies. This design choice allowed a metagame to develop solely around matchups between units on a relatively even playing field and contributes to its continued popularity today. What's perhaps the most important mechanic in the game is actually right there in the title. The game is divided into ages, and the player must progress between the Dark Age, the Feudal Age, the Castle Age and the Imperial Age throughout the course of a single match by building newer structures and amassing resources. This mechanic effectively makes use of the game's historical setting in a way that's flavourful and tied to its balancing. Although the age mechanic is essentially an expensive toll gating off each new batch of upgrades, the way it's implemented actually serves as a unique selling point for the game. It wouldn't be called Age of Empires without its titular mechanic. Perhaps one of the most important factors for the success of not only Age of Empires but the RTS genre as a whole relates to the technology side of the Tetrad. By and large, these titles were developed and released for a PC platform. This allowed players to utilise the greater accuracy of a mouse for the manipulation of units, which facilitates easy micromanagement, something AoE 2 is completely based on. The high number of buttons on a keyboard allowed the developers to also include hotkeys, further allowing skilled players to quickly control units. These inclusions would be far less suited for a traditional console. Steam charts show that only 13% of the game's player base has completed the first tutorial campaign based on William Wallace. However, the huge amount of love the campaigns receive and the fact that they are still releasing them to this day indicates that they are really quite well done. As I mentioned earlier, campaign levels start off with someone speaking of the events about to unfold as if it were in the recent past. This allows them to include historical facts and perhaps spark an interest in the player to learn more. The game's take on history is simple, but does so to succeed in being exciting. In missions themselves, players are treated to the finest in late 90s voice acting and follow different historical figures such as Joan of Arc and Genghis Khan from their humble beginnings to their greatest achievements. A great example of the storytelling in this game is in the first 5 minutes of the Attila the Hun campaign. The player controls Attila as he goes hunting with his brother Bleda, and as you hunt a boar, Bleda reveals his intention to assassinate you with a squad of archers. The only way to not die in this scenario is to be prepared for the betrayal in advance, either by being ready to run, let the boar kill him, or by manually setting him as an enemy and killing him first. These methods of progressing are done solely through the game's systems rather than a dialogue tree, and expertly forces the player to step into the shoes of Attila and betray their brother first. It can even be argued that the nature of the game means that even the skirmish mode outside of the campaign tells stories by itself. Every time the player boots up a new multiplayer match, they are leading a civilization through centuries of progress and conquering or using politics to deal with threats. This gives the game a unique feel and makes each and every match much more memorable. In conclusion, it's no wonder that Age of Empires 2 has had such a lasting cultural appeal. The game served to age well, with its overall aesthetic design elements generally meeting modern standards for conveying high amounts of information in a short time. The game's PC platform further served to make it more compatible with machines for years after its release, allowing it to reach people that weren't even born in 1999. To this day, the medieval RTS game is still an underused niche, of which AoE 2 is widely considered the best, and the definitive edition released this week indicates that this old game has had a reach far beyond 1999.